What's up, guys? Ballin with Blizzy back with another video. Today, I want to preview the NFL playoff bracket, take you all the way to the Super Bowl with what I expect to happen, going matchup by matchup for this wild card round, taking a look at the odds on DraftKings Sportsbook, and then I want to hop over to my FFPC. Most of you watching probably familiar with that contest. We'll dive in a little bit deeper when we get to that, but one of my favorite things to do all year. But let's start by taking a look at the bracket and the matchups. So we're going to start with the Steelers and Texans on the AFC side, a game that I think is going to be a lot closer than most of the public thinks. This is a game between probably a top three defense in the NFL, depending on how you want to order the Broncos, Seahawks, and Texans. No matter how you slice it, those are the three best defenses. The Texans have shut down a number of good offenses this year, and they're really playing well on that side of the ball, and then the offense is doing enough, getting in scoring position, kicking a lot of field goals, but they're doing what they need to do, not turning the ball over, which is good. The Steelers, on the other hand, there's been a lot of rhetoric, a lot of noise, as there has been the last several years, right? Tomlin needs to go. He hasn't won a playoff game in 10 years. The team always starts hot. This year, they started 4-1. Baltimore started 1-5. Came down to Baltimore missing a kick. Otherwise, the Steelers aren't even in this position. But I think they're going to make the most of their opportunity. I think when you look at Aaron Rodgers and how he plays, this is a team that's not going to turn the ball over. He's going to get rid of the ball quickly. He's not going to make bad decisions. He's not probably going to hold on to the ball and let Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter get to him in that pass rush to be able to take over that game. A game is in Pittsburgh Monday night where they haven't lost since, I believe, like 1993. They've won 23 straight home Monday night football games. So I think this really sets up well for them. I'm going to take the Texans in this matchup, but I really think this comes down to like a field goal at the end. I think that crowd is going to be juiced. I think Aaron Rodgers wants this, more than anything. I think Mike Tomlin, as we all know, has that special voodoo, that special way of making games close and pulling out games that, most people aren't expecting them to win. I'm going to roll with the Texans, but I'm telling you, be warned, this is going to be a close game. This is not going to be a blowout. This is not going to be, the Texans are going to dominate. They have the most physically imposing defense. They're scary, and they're facing a 41, 42-year-old quarterback. I don't think that's the way it's going to go. I think it's going to come down to a last-second field goal by Fairbairn, and I'm going to have the Texans moving on. Jaguars-Bills. Again, this is one where maybe public perception is that the Bills are, the juggernaut. They've been to the playoff. They've been in this spot before. The Jaguars are kind of the new kids on the block. Josh Allen, how are you going to go against him? James Cook, the NFL rushing champion this year. I just think it's a game where the Jaguars have earned this spot. They beat the Broncos in Denver a few weeks ago. I don't think the Jaguars are really going to let this slip away. They have a fantastic run defense. The Bills this year are leading the league in rush rate over expectation. They're just running the ball. Joe Brady's just running the ball. I think a lot of that has to do with their lack of firepower on the outside, on the perimeter with their receivers. They got this crazy rotation going. When you're using Brandon Cooks and Tyrell Shavers as your receivers, predominantly, of course, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman mixed in. But when you're using guys like that, that's not an aerial attack that I don't think scares anybody. So with the fact that the Jaguars shut down the run, and it's going to have to be a hero Josh Allen game, I'm going to push the Jaguars through to the next round. Patriots-Chargers, very interesting matchup. Two really, really, high-powered offenses when the quarterbacks are really playing at that top flight level, which they have been all year. Drake May probably deserves the MVP. I'm not sure if he's going to win it, but he's been lights out in Josh McDaniels' scheme in that second year. The thing that concerns me, if you're the Chargers, is the offensive tackles. We've talked about it all year. It's been well documented. Slater, Alt, both out. It's been kind of a revolving door. They don't have the best protection for Justin Herbert. When he does get protected, he's, fantastic. He's phenomenal. He's an absolute beast. The thing to watch out for, though, the Patriots don't have really fearsome edge rushers. If this is a Chargers-Texans matchup, you can just go ahead and assume that the Texans are going to destroy them, We saw them play recently, and it probably wasn't as bad as, we thought it was going to be when the Texans did play the Chargers. But the Patriots with Harold Landry, Caleb Von Chase on, that's not a pass rush that's really going to do, the damage that you would expect against these backup tackles for the Chargers. But I think the Patriots have enough offense to outscore the Chargers, no matter if it's a high-scoring game or a low-scoring game. I think the Patriots get it done at home, led by Drake May. I don't think he goes out in the first round. On the NFC side, I think there's very little to say here. Yes, the Panthers defense did give the Rams a ton of trouble in that early December matchup when the Rams went out to Charlotte and lost that game. Matthew Stafford, 2 interceptions, 1 fumble, just an ugly game for him. The Panthers corners are really, really kind of what, stirs the drink for their defense. The interior, the run D, not very good. Derek Brown, a very good player, but overall, they're really not stopping the run. Even last week, you look at it, the way Bucky Irving started the game, the way Rachaad White, ripped off a couple runs. I don't think there's much to say here. I think the Rams are going to correct their mistakes from the first matchup, and I think they're moving on. Eagles 49ers, very interesting matchup. 49ers, one of the most horrific front sevens you will ever see. Decimated by injuries, and it's only getting worse as they just lost backup linebacker Tatum Bethune this week, out for the season. He was replacing, of course, the All-Pro, the great Fred Warner. They already lost Joey Bosa. They already lost Mykel Williams. The list goes on and on. They're getting gashed, right? We saw Zach Charbonnet. We saw Kenneth Walker really start to feast as that game went on when they played for the 1 seed this past week. Niners were hosting the Seahawks. So I think this is a get-right spot for the Eagles. I think the rushing attack that they have, very formidable. Of course, Jalen Hurts when he uses his legs, but Saquon Barkley, I think, will be able to just run right through that 49ers defense. And then, of course, on the other side of the ball, 49ers offense had been hot, had been coming in off a run of 30-point games. We saw that all get shut down by the Seahawks defense. Eagles defense, really, really stout. I think they're going to be able to do a lot of things to, stymie that 49ers attack as well. And really, the 49ers attack is all based on getting the run game going. Doesn't sound like Trent Williams is going to play this week. They're already a very inefficient rushing attack as it is. Christian McCaffrey this year under 4 yards a carry. So I'm going to push the Eagles through. I think the Eagles defense is too much, and I think their offense is going to have their way with that struggling 49ers front seven. Bears-Packers, really, really interesting matchup to me. One that I'm going back and forth with. A lot of people confused. Why are the Packers 1-point favorites going into Chicago? The Bears as the 2 seed, Packers at the 7 seed. But I think we've seen this before. We saw a 7 versus 2 where Matt LaFleur, absolutely cooked and throttled the Cowboys in Cowboy Stadium a couple years back. He knows how to coach. Jordan Love's been in that spot before. Josh Jacobs, obviously the engine that team runs through. I think they're actually going to be able to pull off this upset against the Bears in Chicago. I just think Caleb Williams' first playoff start, Ben Johnson, first playoff game as a head coach. I just think the experience is on the Packers side. Yes, of course, they've lost Micah Parsons. Huge, huge loss. But I think that game, it's going to be messy. It's going to be ugly. It's projected to be like 30 to 35 mile an hour winds. I think the Packers have enough on that ground attack and that rushing attack, even though the Bears have been really formidable in that area. I think the Packers have enough to get it done. And then when a quarterback needs to make a throw and a head coach needs to make a play call or, change the game or flip the script at the most opportune time, I think it's going to be Matt LaFleur. So I'm going to push the Packers through as 1-point favorites. Coming back over here, that leaves us the Broncos and the Texans, a matchup that I really think is a toss-up. You think the 5 seed having to play their second road game, now going into Denver well rested, but I think that defense is very, very, very formidable and is going to be able to give the Broncos some issues. But on the other hand, I think that Broncos defense is going to force CJ Stroud into making 1 or 2 game-changing plays in a bad way for the Texans, and that's going to allow the Broncos to move forward. I'm really interested to see, though, can Sean Payton, can Bo Nix figure anything out during this bye week, this week off that they have to prepare to throw wrinkles and throw a curveball at the Texans, move the ball, put some points on the board? Because I was very unimpressed with everything on the line, playing for home field advantage in the 1 seed. The Broncos put forth a very lackluster effort at home against the Chargers backups last week. So that's something to watch for, but I'm going to trust the Broncos defense to make a play against CJ Stroud when it matters most. And the Broncos will not lose at Mile High Stadium in their playoff opener. Patriots-Jaguars, really interesting one for me. 2 teams that are kind of new to the scene this year. Of course, historically, the Patriots not new to the scene. They've been here, done that. But this cast of characters, brand new stage for them. Drake May, divisional round playoff game at home. Jaguars have had a really good season. Trevor Lawrence leading that team, kind of flipping the script. We a lot of people had kind of given up on Trevor Lawrence. What is going on with him? Is he ever going to live up to the hype? I think this year he's finally proving it. They're really, really good coach in Liam Cohen. But I'm going to say that weather plays a factor in here. The Jaguars having to go up to Foxborough, not really their vibe. Patriots are going to be used to it. That house is going to be rocking. And I'm going to push the Patriots through to the AFC title game. On the other side, Seahawks-Packers, kind of the same deal. I think the Seahawks defense is going to be just too much for that Packers offense. And then, of course, I think the Seahawks offense is a little bit more trustworthy than the Broncos on the other side that I expressed some concerns about. Darnold, we know he can panic at any time. We know he can ruin, a drive at any moment. He can, make a boneheaded decision. But I think the Seahawks defense is going to make it to where they get to 14, 17, 20 points. It's going to be hard to lose. Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to give that Green Bay secondary fits. So I think that the Seahawks are moving on inside Lumen Field, and the 12th man gets them across the finish line. Eagles-Rams, very, very interesting matchup for me because we saw these two teams matched up last year. The Rams had a drive to win the game there at the end after kind of getting outplayed for the first 3.5 quarters. They have what it takes, but I'm not sure this team that I've seen on the road lately is good enough to beat the Eagles. The Eagles are the defending champions for a reason. They have a really good formula. Don't turn the ball over, run the ball, make throws when we have to, play very, very stout defense. And my concern is that the Rams went up to Seattle, they lost. The Rams went to Charlotte, they lost. The Rams had a chance to kind of take a stranglehold on their own fate in that final game on the road in Atlanta. They couldn't get it done. So am I really trusting a team that lost to the Panthers a few weeks ago, lost on the road to Seattle a couple weeks ago, lost on the road to Atlanta a week ago? I'm not. I'm going to take the defending Super Bowl champions at home. The elements are going to play a factor. Matthew Stafford and that offense just doesn't quite have it rolling the same on the road in Philly. I'm going to push the Eagles through. Over here, fascinating matchup, but at the end of the day, I think that the Broncos defense is really going to have the pressure cranked up on Drake May. I think it's going to be hard to win with guys on the outside like Pop Douglas and Kayshon Boutte, even Stephon Diggs in the slot against Jaquan McMillan. Of course, on the outside, you've got Surtain. Riley Moss can be attacked, but I think that defense, especially against an O-line that has given up a lot of pressure this year, you're talking about Nick Bonito, you're talking about Zach Allen. I'm going to say the Broncos do, in spite of their lackluster offense, beat the Patriots at home and head to the Super Bowl. On the other side, Eagles at Seahawks. Very, very interesting matchup. I think you can make really good cases about why both quarterbacks could struggle against the opposing defense. But I think the edge ultimately comes down to we haven't seen this Eagles offense be what they were a couple years ago, be what they were last year, where they really crank it up and they're a well-oiled machine. The run game has slipped. The offensive line play has slipped. Jalen Hurts has faced questions all year about why the offense is struggling, why he can't get the ball to A.J. Brown, why they don't look as seamless as they did last year. I don't think that gets any better when you travel cross-country from Philly to Seattle and have to play the number 1 seed and the number 1 defense in the NFL. So I'm going to roll with the Seattle Seahawks. Looks chalky to me. I know both 1 seeds, but I think that's what it's ultimately going to come down to. I think once you get to the Super Bowl, I don't trust Bo Nix against that defense. Do I trust Sam Darnold? No, but I trust him more than I trust Bo Nix, right? It seems like all year the Broncos are trying to hide Bo Nix, no straight dropbacks, everything's a roll, everything's a sprint out. We're trying to mask something, we're trying to hide something. Whereas the Seahawks are saying, you know what? We trust Clint Kubiak, we trust Jackson Smith and Jigba, we trust Sam Darnold. We're going to run our offense. Mistakes happen, but as of late down this stretch run, it's looked a lot better. I expect the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl. So I'm going to take the Seahawks over the Broncos in Santa Clara to win the Super Bowl. Now, going over to look at the odds on DraftKings Sportsbook, this actually matches up with what they think. They believe the Seahawks are the favorites to win the Super Bowl. They think the Rams are the second favorite. I'm not sure if I agree with that. I'm definitely not sure if I agree that the Rams are twice as likely as the Eagles to make it there, especially considering if those two teams were to face off head-to-head, Eagles-Rams, again, that game would be in Philadelphia. So you got the Bills down here at 10-1, Texans at 12-1, Jags at 13-1, Patriots, again, interesting. I did have the Patriots Broncos, as you saw in that bracket, matching up in the AFC title game. But I think ultimately it sounds crazy, Sam Darnold getting over the hump. I think the books have it right? Sam Darnold the last 2 years, 14-3. That's not a fluke, right? We saw what happened in Minnesota. It's not just the environment's elite and, anybody can win. No, that's not true. Look at JJ 9 McCarthy. He was awful this year, right? It would have been a pipe dream for him to win 14 games. Seattle last year with Geno Smith, they let go of him. They let go of DK Metcalf, maybe surprisingly. They bring in Cooper Kupp, right? But JSN takes that ascension. Sam Darnold steps in. They win 14 games. They go 14-3. So I think the books have it right. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out because this really is a wide open year. Nobody's going to be surprised if Josh Allen goes on an absolute tear and, just is the best player on the field in the wild card, divisional, AFC title game, and the Super Bowl, and that he takes advantage of this wide open AFC race where there's no Mahomes, there's no Lamar Jackson, there's no Joe Burrow in the field, right? So this is his opportunity, but I don't think he gets it done. And in fact, like I said, I think they're probably going to lose in the first round. I just don't think they're a well-rounded team. They're good in certain areas, but I don't think they're well-rounded enough to win 3 road games to get to a Super Bowl, and then, of course, that neutral field game. So that's my breakdown for the playoff bracket in the NFL. Now, speaking of the playoffs, one of my favorite contests to play in all year, the FFPC Playoff Challenge. If you're unfamiliar with this format, what it is, you pick one player from each team, you fade 2 teams, because there's 12 roster spots. There's only 14 teams in the playoffs. There's only 12 roster spots. So you're going to pick a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 4 flexes, a tight end, a kicker, and a defense. Important caveats on this site, if you're not familiar, it's PPR, but it's tight end premium as well. That means 1.5 points per reception for any tight end that makes your lineup. I've played this contest for years. It's a ton of fun to think about the game theory and the strategy of how you're really going to get different than the field, because it's easy to just go in here and click all, the obvious players and kind of, build a team that's very similar to what a lot of other people are going to do. So how I'm kind of approaching this year is how to get different, but not too different. You don't want to go chalk and take all the second or third highest projected players for fantasy points on each team. You don't want every team's third highest projected player, right? That doesn't make any sense. You want the best plays, but you have to be able to pivot to get off of certain things. And so, this is interesting because you get double points in the Super Bowl. So if we're basing it off of my bracket, you get double points for a Darnold, a Kenneth Walker, a JSN, double points for a Bo Nix, RJ Harvey, a Cortland Sutton, for example. In years past, the thought has been use one of the cheat code quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, who are playing in the wild card round, and assuming that you can get 4 games out of them, right? You get their wild card game, you get their divisional game, their conference title game, and then the double point Super Bowl. It's kind of like the cheat code, if you could do that. Well, this year's a little bit different because at the quarterback position, feels like there's only one cheat code. There's only one guy who can really, just dominate 4 games, it seems, and that would be Josh Allen, right? Now, for one, I want to get a little bit different than the field. So if the field is projecting to use Josh Allen as the highest owned quarterback, I want to be off him regardless. But specifically in my case, where I don't even have him winning the first game, I'm not using him, right? So the question becomes, who else in here, for me, again, do you use Darnold? Because I think he's going to the Super Bowl? Maybe, maybe not. JSN in a PPR format's most likely going to outscore him, right? So the more I thought about it and kind of dug into the data, what I came to be my play in my primary entry is that the closest you're going to get to a Konami code quarterback who can dominate rushing and throwing and has the potential to play 4 games, for me, is Jalen Hurts. So that's the way I'm looking at it. The way I'm kind of thinking about why to use him, even though I don't have him going to the Super Bowl, I think besides Josh Allen, he's the guy that you can say with the most certainty can account for the most total touchdowns on his team, right? if there's passing touchdowns for the Eagles, it's most likely coming from Jalen Hurts. If there's rushing touchdowns coming from the Eagles, we've seen over the last 4 years, there's a high probability it's coming from Jalen Hurts on the 1 yard line, right? And so he has the ability to kind of stifle the rest of his teammates, stifle Saquon Barkley's touchdown equity, and then also be scoring when he throws one to Devontae, throws one to Goddard, throws one to A.J. Brown, right? So I think for me, Jalen Hurts is how I'm going to get contrarian right off the bat. Moving over to running back. Very interesting. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey, just a ridiculous year. 25 PPR points a game. He's projected this week for over 20 PPR points again. Tight end premium, though, for me, made me consider George Kittle. Because you have to play a tight end. You know that you have to play a tight end. And then when you get to looking, Goddard's out for me because I'm playing Hurts. Is Schultz a game breaker? No. Dalton Kincaid? Maybe. You can certainly make a case for Dalton Kincaid. I think a lot of people are going to gravitate to Colston Loveland. So for me, I kind of went back and forth. I really thought about using Kittle because, again, I think the Niners are going to be losing that game. I think they're going to be coming from behind. I think Christian McCaffrey is a very inefficient runner when he faces a defensive front like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and these boys, especially without Trent Williams. And so I went back and forth between George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. I think at the end of the day, I just trust that, the projections, if they're gonna lose this game, I think that even with the 1.5 points per reception for Kittle, I think in a 1-game losing sample, Christian McCaffrey probably does still outscore George Kittle. So I'm playing Christian McCaffrey. Running back 2, I'm going to do something and use Josh Jacobs because I have the Bears losing that game. Most people, it seems like, are going to be hard fading the 2 teams that you won't use at all, the Panthers and the Steelers. I'm a little bit more bullish on the Steelers than most, and I'm a little bit less bullish that the Bears are a true 2 seed. So my plan is to also get different by hard fading the Bears and hard fading the Panthers and using a Steeler. So if I'm hard fading the Bears and I think the Packers win in a kind of a gross game where it's dominated by both ground attacks, I'm pushing Josh Jacobs into my lineup. Moving on to receiver, Puka and JSN are auto clicks for me. Right? This is where you don't get too cute. This is where you don't go away from the projections. The Seahawks go to the Super Bowl. JSN is going to probably most likely outscore everybody else on his team. He needs to be in there. Puka Nacua, he's been a monster, right? Yes, there's times when Devontae can, have red zone variants go his way. Stafford obviously can be a worthy play. If you don't want Josh Allen, you have the Rams going to Super Bowl, for instance. But I think Puka Nacua has shown all year, projectable numbers. I think you got to roll with him. I'm going to transition down to defense now. This is very interesting. But because I have the Texans losing the game, but I think they're a pretty stout defense, I'm choosing to use them. Remember, these are kind of your soft fades, your kicker and your defense. 2 spots where you really don't want the team to win, but you're not hard fading them. Like I've already said, I'm hard fading Chicago and Carolina. So that's my defense. And if I'm using a Steeler, this is where we're going to get a little bit different and off the board as well. I think DK Metcalf gets shut down by the outside corners, by Lassiter, by Stingley. We've seen last couple weeks, Darnell Washington out. We've seen the snap share, route participation for Pat Freiermuth go way up. I think it's a way to get different. Tight end premium. If he's the number 1 target, if they're taking away the outside and Aaron Rodgers is working over the middle of the field, I think Pat Freiermuth is a very strong play in this format. So he's who I'm going to fill the tight end spot with. Looking at the running back situation, I think the best projectable player on the Jaguars, since I have them winning, I think their passing attack is very spread out. You've got Brenton Strange at tight end. You've got Jacoby Myers. You've got Parker Washington, who's really come on strong. And, of course, you've got Brian Thomas. But I think touchdown equity, who's most likely to score, who's most likely to handle the highest volume of touches, I think there's no question about that. That's Travis Etienne. Looking at the Patriots-Chargers game, I don't have the Chargers moving on. I do think that game is going to be pretty explosive, but what it came down to for me is how do I want to prioritize my flexes, right? Because you're going to have to soft fade somebody at kicker, and you've got 3 other flexes. So where that leaves me, of course, is Denver, who I have going to the Super Bowl, New England, not using Carolina, fading Chicago, but that leaves me the Chargers, and that leaves me the Bills. So between the Bills, the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Patriots, my belief is that the least trustworthy team is the Chargers, and so I went ahead and used Cameron Dicker at kicker. And then what I did to fill out the rest of my primary lineup, the one that I feel good about, and again, I think I have enough tweaks here to already be different. I think a lot of people are going to fade or soft fade the Packers. I think I'm different there. I know I'm different at quarterback, and I'm most different at tight end. So I didn't think there was really a need to get cute with the rest of it. I think at wide receiver, I like Cortland Sutton. He's the primary pass catcher. He's going to be pretty much who the pass game goes through in Denver. They're still kind of doing weird stuff in their backfield, using McLaughlin, using Harvey, and using Tyler Bidet. So I wanted to stay away from that. And then those final 2 spots were, again, the Bills. For me, it was really close between Kincaid and James Cook, especially considering James Cook is kind of going at the strength of what the Jaguars do well defensively. But I just think you gotta trust the rushing king. Am I really going to trust Dalton Kincaid, even in tight end premium, over James Cook? Not for me, but I can easily, see people making that case. But I think I've gotten different enough in my lineup already that I don't need to go off the wall with Kincaid, even in tight end premium. So I filled it out with Cook. And then for my last spot was a Patriot. I was really, really going back and forth between Stephon Diggs and Trevion Henderson. Ultimately, I leaned with Trevion Henderson. I just think his explosion on any touch, being able to, put up an 80-yard touchdown, even catch the ball out of the backfield. I think he just has that ceiling that you want to ultimately win a contest like this. I think Diggs gives you that steady production, but I don't think he has the home run hitting ability on any given play that he gets a touch like Trevion Henderson. So this was my build: Jalen Hurts, Christian McCaffrey, Josh Jacobs, Puka Nacua, JSN at receiver, flexes, James Cook, Trevion Henderson, Travis Etienne, Cortland Sutton, tight end, maybe the most brave play of all, Pat Freiermuth, Cameron Dicker at kicker, and the Texans defense. So that's how I built it. Let me know how you guys are building it. Let me know if you've played this contest before, if you're excited to play it now that you've kind of seen how it goes. Again, I'm hard fading, not using at all a Bear or a Panther. Probably safe on the Panther side, probably a little bit more risky. Home team 2 seed with the Bears fading them. But that'll do it for this video. We'll be back soon. We will be going into golf mode soon. I'll be doing pretty much weekly previews, projections, and modeling for the tournaments as the PGA season gets underway. But as far as the NFL goes, let me know who you're taking to win the Super Bowl. Let me know who you're taking to win the AFC, the NFC. And if you're playing the playoff challenge, let me know what angles, what game theories, what strategies you're using to get a little bit different. Talk to you guys again soon.